the heroic story from the book of Maccabees, where the mother who loved her children loved God more. And although her children all loved life, they loved more than that the God who had given them life. And the emperor ordered them to give up their religion, give up their faith in the living God, or die horrible deaths. They chose the latter path to follow. This was a heroic and a horrible moment in the history of Israel. The faith of God, of the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, was alive in the souls of that family. The emperor could not stand someone being worshipped other than himself. In the gospel passages, when Jesus is confronted with the question of whether it is lawful to pay taxes to Caesar, and he gives the classic example, he said, well, whose picture is on the coin? And they said, well, Caesar's. He said, well, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar, and to God's the things that are God. But the problem was, in ancient times and in modern times, Caesar wants it all. Caesar doesn't want to share authority with any power above this world. And we can see this in the whole history of humanity. The Roman emperor had for 3 centuries slaughtered Christians because they would not offer sacrifice to Caesar. Then when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the emperor was calling the shots, deciding what is good and bad, what is doctrinal and what isn't doctrinal, and all of the Orthodox bishops who believed in the divinity as well as the humanity of Christ were basically exiled, forced out of their diocese. And on it goes throughout history. In the 20th century, the rise of communism tried to obliterate religion in any of its forms, wherever it rose up, because Caesar wants it all. Caesar wants to be the only source of truth. Caesar wants to be the only source of power. So a person of conscience, like the 7 sons in today's first reading, could find themselves in jeopardy. In the Middle East, of course, we know the Islamic State has slaughtered thousands of Muslims and thousands of Christians because they would not submit to the Islamic State rulers' authority, and they held to a higher authority. We could think of those Coptic Christians that were slaughtered on the beach on the Mediterranean in Libya, the dignity with which they faced their execution because of their faith in the living God that had an authority and power above all in this world. In the United States, we're so lucky to have a First Amendment that states the Congress shall never have an established official religion, and Congress won't pass any laws interfering with the exercise of religion. We take that for granted, but it is so unique in the history of the world, even to this very day. In the First Amendment, they also say there's freedom of free speech, the freedom of the press, and the right to peacefully assemble to give grievances to the government that they'd have to respond to. Canada doesn't have a First Amendment. We think they have as much freedom of speech as we do. No, they don't. I remember 20 years ago, there was a heinous murder case in Canada. I was in Buffalo at the time. A couple were serial killers. When they were arrested, a judge said, no one can report on this trial till it's over. You can't talk about it on talk radio. So all the people on talk radio had that 7-second dump. Anybody tried to call in on it, they couldn't speak about it. They dumped it. None of the papers could report on how the trial was going. As a result, Canadians coming over getting the Buffalo Evening News were carrying it back in droves, or they'd be listening to American radio stations. Could you imagine a judge saying the press can't report on anything? No, because we have the First Amendment. It's something precious. And yet that amendment is only as powerful as the people who defend it. So we have to be grateful for it and be alert to the erosion of the First Amendment in any of its forms. And it is under assault from the perspective of religion. In 2009, the Connecticut state legislatures were introducing a bill to take the control of Catholic parishes away from the bishop, away from the priest, and put it in the hands of the laity, which is a fine model for the Congregationalist church, but it's not the Catholic church. And only because there was a huge uproar about it did they back off on it. And many other attempts of the states and the federal government to coerce, to limit the freedom of religion. So we have to pray for our nation, especially in this coming week, that our liberties will be maintained, that our rule by law, civil and criminal, will be stable, so that we can continue to enjoy the liberties we've always had. Not only to worship the way we like, but to live the way we like. And to have a church be involved in the helping of the poor, the curing of the sick, the multiple efforts that is a part of the heart of Catholicism will continue. We know, though, there are some places like in Massachusetts, Washington, D.C., and a couple other places where the Catholic Church had to give up its adoption agencies because the people at those agencies didn't want to give children up for adoption to gay couples. And that's going to expand more and more. An impingement of the state on the freedom of religion to carry out works of love according to religious principles rather than purely secular principles. The First Amendment is so much a part of the fabric of the American psyche that we can be confident that it will survive. But it will only survive if the prayerful people of all religions continue to make their primary loyalty to God and to carry out godly acts according to the plans of God.